Good morning, everybody. It's Monday, September 4th. Wanted to wish everybody a happy Monday, a happy Labor Day, a happy either kids gone back to school or just about to go back to school. So I just wanted to start off with a brief overview of the Russian military losses over the last 24 hours, and then I'll buzz through some of the key news items that have either happened over the last 24 hours or just happening now. So to start off with, Russia's military losses: 460 400. That'd be amazing. 460 troops have been liquidated. 4 tanks, 14 APVs. Again, 29 artillery pieces. It's just astounding. So Russia has now, by the cost estimates that I've applied to their artillery pieces, has now passed the 14 billion in artillery losses. That's astounding. Most countries over their recent history, all told, have not owned, operated, and decommissioned that many artillery pieces. And most countries probably would say that, like a UK, a Canada, etc., would have maybe 100 to 150 artillery pieces in active duty, not mothballed, that sort of thing. And Russia's just losing 29 on a daily basis. It seems like 20 to 30 is the range on a daily basis. And I don't have the stats, but I did. It just came to my mind that the August summary came out, and I think they lost six. Was it 600 pieces of artillery? Anyways, they set a record for artillery losses in the month of August for the entire war. So clearly, the Ukrainians have a mission. Their counter battery fire is off the hook. It's incredible what they've done, because if you remember back at the start of the war, when places like Kharkiv and Severodonetsk and Lysychansk and Kherson and all the other cities were just getting either bombarded, or the areas around them were getting bombarded. And there were days where the Russians were dropping 60,000 artillery shells in a day, and the Ukrainians couldn't muster 5 to 10, and they were completely outgunned, out ammoed, out everything. And now the tide has turned, where the Russians are complaining that they have no shells, they have no artillery, they have no counter battery artillery, and they're getting absolutely picked apart. 2 MLRS, 1 anti-aircraft warfare system, 37 UAVs. So apparently, Jonathan M.S. Pierce, I was watching one of his pieces, and he indicated that he saw that the Russians received a new shipment of Shahed drones from Iran about a week ago, and they're just firing them off. Unfortunately, out of these 37 UAVs, I believe 28 were shot down, which meant 9 got through, and a few made it through to Odessa. And of course, the Russians are bombing grain infrastructure and port infrastructure. And but the day before that, I believe it was in the 50s of UAVs launched at Ukraine, and cruise missiles, and the Ukrainians shot down every single one of them. So I kind of wonder, it's a game of chess, what goes on with what the Russians are targeting, where they want the Ukrainians either to keep their artillery or move their artillery. Prior to the end of the grain deal and the attacks on Odessa, my thinking was that the Russians were constantly targeting Ukrainian cities such as Kyiv, so that Ukraine would keep its Patriots, its SAMTs, its NASAMs, etc., in and around the major cities, and not move them to the front line where they could be used to target Russian aircraft 5 to 50 kilometers across the border. Now, to me, I'm wondering if the Russians are targeting Odessa and other ports because of the fact that, one, they want to impact the grain deal. They want to strangle the global grain market, raise the prices, get more for their own grain, and try to force somebody to the table to say, hey, we want a peace deal with Ukraine, we need the grain, that sort of thing. But I also wonder if it's also to try to draw away some of Ukraine's air defense systems away from the major cities as the fall approaches, so that the Russians can target their energy infrastructure. So I don't know. It's a game of chess, but that's what I wonder. One boat, I'll show you a video of that, which is fantastic, and 47 vehicles and fuel tanks. And yesterday, I think it was 51. Don't want to lose my spot on here, but clearly, if there's a one-day blip, then I think, okay, well, maybe the Ukrainians just got lucky and they had, hit a large amount of X pieces of equipment. When I see 2 days in a row, basically wiping out 100 vehicles and fuel tanks, that tells me it's a concerted effort. Either something has dramatically changed with the Ukrainians targeting, or with the Russians' logistics. And part of the logistics, I believe, what's happening is that a lot of the bridges that allow the Russians to supply the Western Front, if you want to call it that, and Crimea, a lot of the rail networks have been blown up, and it's basically forced the Russians to switch to boats, ferries, trucks, a lot longer distances with vehicles, and the Ukrainians know that, and know that those vehicles have to basically gather at central hubs to either on or offload their whatever they're bringing, fuel, food, bullets, that sort of thing. So I think the Ukrainians are playing 3D chess, and knowing that they took out those bridges, I think they kind of have pieced together where the trucks are going to go from, and two, where they're going to have to drop off supplies in order to get those distributed to troops. And the Ukrainians have been ready to target them. Excuse me. And there's also a video out from a couple of days ago, 2 days ago, I believe, that showed it looked like a dozen Russian fuel trucks all burned out. I saw some claims that it was old, but then I saw some other claims that refuted that and said it was new. But the Ukrainians tend to tell the truth, or at least tend to be more accurate than the Russians when it comes to what they're targeting and what they're hitting. So let's just say that the vehicles and fuel tanks are have moved up the priority list as far as targeting. In other news, which I think is a really, really good thing, Ukraine's President Zelensky has announced 41-year-old Crimean Tatar Rustam Umerov, current head of State Property Fund, will replace Reznikov as the Ministry of Defense. This is a very welcome development for a number of reasons. One, Reznikov was the sort of one of the faces of global effort to obtain additional military equipment for the Ukrainian military. Reznikov kind of made the rounds, went to the Ramstein events, visited various heads of state, made the case for F-16s and tanks, etc. And so he was a global face, and by all accounts got along well. I think he loved the camera, loved the photo op, but that's fine if things work out. But at the same time, over the last year, there have been numerous stories, numerous reports, numerous arrests regarding corruption in the Ukrainian military. Specifically, 6-8 months ago, I believe it was, a large amount of corruption was uncovered where the Ukrainian military was overpaying by a factor of 3 to 10 for food and equipment. And people that reported either directly or indirectly to Reznikov were responsible for this corruption, grift, inflation of costs, that sort of thing. And those people were basically arrested, removed, etc. And a lot of people felt that Reznikov was going to be the one to take the fall as well, even if he wasn't directly implicated. There's no way that should be going on in your ministry without you knowing about it. Excuse me. There should be regular audits going on. Regular, audits. Sorry, just having a sip of coffee. Haven't talked this much in a long time. So, and the thinking was that maybe Reznikov was left in place because of the fact that he was such a good political military figure and such a good figurehead, and it wasn't the time to basically remove him. And then just recently, it was found out that I think reports have stated that upwards of 1 million MREs meals that have gone out to troops on the front line were not fit for consumption. I haven't been able to find the exact details on that, but that was apparently the straw that broke the camel's back. The interesting thing about this is, first of all, the age of this gentleman, which is fantastic. He has a great resume. I'm not going to go deep into it, but he has a fantastic resume. He's extremely well respected. He is a Crimean Tatar, which is fantastic. Crimea is obviously the holy grail of, the Ukrainian military's aspirations to get their territory back. It is the piece of territory that Vladimir Putin holds the most dearly, and the Crimean Tatars have been basically abused, disenfranchised, imprisoned, starved, force mobilized out of Crimea over the decades and decades by the Russians, by the Soviets, etc. So to put somebody like this in charge of the Ukrainian military is fantastic. And oh, by the way, he's Muslim. And not only is it astounding that Ukraine is so inclusive that a Jewish leader just appointed a Muslim gentleman to be the Minister of Defense, but this should also give him some Ukraine and him stronger ties to countries like Turkey. So I think this is absolutely brilliant. And again, 3 and 4D chess being played by Zelensky. It's the right time to remove Reznikov. It's the right time to put somebody else in place. This is the right gentleman, as far as I've been able to learn. This checks all the boxes, and I think is going to pay off in spades down the road. And in addition, I think some fresh thinking and blood and that sort of thing is required here. I think some of the strategies either have been questionable or have be possibly stale. I don't know. And I'm not an armchair military general quarterback to criticize everything, but I think that it's my perception, the perception of people, some people on the ground, some people on the Ukrainian side of things, and just people in general, is that some of the approaches that have been taken lately have been extremely successful, but some of them have also seemed to be scattershot and a waste of resources. So I don't know if that's the case, but I do think a fresh set of eyes at a point where Ukraine is in a position of strength and gathering momentum, it's the right time to do this, as opposed to when you're on your back foot or things are extremely frustrated. And so anyways, that's a little bit of a ramble for me, but I think that this gentleman is going to make an impact right away, both internally and externally, for Ukraine, for Ukrainian military, and the global effort to gain additional momentum, both political, militarily, strategically. So anyways, that's that. Okay. Oop, I don't want to. So we've been sitting on 18 boats forever as far as the Ukraine military losses, and now it's gone to 19. Where was that? Oh, right there. So I'm not going to be able to show the middle portion of this, but basically, this is a Russian military vessel. It's a literal. It's not a large ship per se, right? It's got probably has a crew of 2 to 3, can be used to ferry troops or supplies, that sort of thing, or as a littoral or coastal patrol. Anyways, so it was unloading some supplies in the Black Sea, and to go down a bit of a rabbit hole for a second. So the what's gone on recently is there has been a ton of activity, obviously, in the Black Sea, in Crimea, in the Kinburn Peninsula, the Kinburn Spit. There are some oil rigs out here that the Ukrainians have basically treated as kind of like waypoints, forward operating bases, whatever, as well as Snake Island's a mini island. They've recently taken out an S-400 that was right on this western tip of Crimea. And the S-400 basically has a massive, massive responsibility as far as the amount of coverage that it provides to keep large drones and planes out of the air, helicopters, etc., out of the air. So you've actually had Ukrainians land at least once on the western point of Crimea, liquidated a bunch of troops, either spotted for or helped to direct the takeout of the S-400 system, done some other damage, etc. And to me, that was a bit of a sort of a suppression of enemy air defense seed. So basically, open up the Black Sea for both air assets potentially and additional sea assets to move more freely, to be more aggressive, etc. And now what we're seeing is the Bayraktar, who they were not all destroyed. I've seen people say, "Oh, they were all just destroyed." The Russians didn't just destroy anything, all of something. Yes, a few Bayraktars were hit, but then the Ukrainians basically adjusted and started to get additional air assets and drones, etc. And the Bayraktars no longer had to be no longer had to solve all problems. They didn't. They were no longer the eyes, the ears, the tip of the spear, launching the missiles, etc. Bayraktars could fall back to, I think, what was their primary role or best role for them while the Russians still had air defense, which is ISR, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. And I believe the Bayraktars have been used in an ISR setting, keeping them safe, out of range of S-300s, S-400s, books, all that sort of stuff, but at the same time still serving a purpose, spotting for special forces, spotting for the general military, spotting for drones, etc. Anyways, with this S-400 being taken out and other activities that have gone on in the Black Sea, I think the Ukrainians now feel that they have a little more freedom of movement, and they have been able to use the Bayraktar to either spot and or take out Russian supply ship. I'll say one for now. So I'm going to play this video. You're going to see the first 11 seconds, then I'm going to skip forward a bit. But what you're basically going to see is, by my count, 5 to 6 Russian soldiers on the boat, unloading equipment, 1 to 2 in the water, transferring it to shore, and then several on shore. You're going to see the boat get struck at the 11-second mark. I'm going to pause it right there so I don't get like completely deleted or whatever, and then I'll move it forward a bit and you can see the aftermath in color. I'll also link this video, this clip, in the video afterwards so you can watch the full thing. It's quite impressive. Here we go. Oh wait, let me full screen it, and I gotta watch the 11-second mark here. So here you go. You can see this guy just ran onto shore. This guy's running out there. So there's 1, 2. Let me just back this up a bit. So these 1, 2. Is that a third guy there? Yeah. Okay. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Kind of these guys are the bucket brigade, the handoff, right? And then here's. I'm sorry, I'm teasing you guys. 1, 2, 3, 4, and I think there's 5. I'll let it play a bit here. Yeah. Okay. So we'll call it 5 on the boat, 4 on the bucket brigade, and a couple close on shore. And you can get a sense of how many guys are on shore too. They're all pretty close. Okay, and something happens to the boat there. To me, that seems like a similar type of strike to what the Bayraktar was doing before they kind of went dark. I don't know for sure. It's a pretty substantial strike. This is not a drone dropped munition or one of those little IEDs or whatever. This is it's moving at a good clip, and it has a pretty, like, that blanks out the screen for a second, right? So I'm gonna say that was a pretty substantial missile. Didn't go well for the guys in the boat, didn't go well for the guys in the water for sure, and I would say a few on shore decided to take a breather. So I'm going to skip ahead, and there's color. So right there you can see that basically the entire boat is charred, and whatever it was didn't just do some surface damage to the boat. It basically penetrated all the way through to the engine, blew out the engine. Obviously, sad to see there's a substantial oil slick, but it basically gutted the entire boat. So anybody that was inside, anybody that was on, anybody that was in the water, whatever, definitely didn't have a good time. And that's a picture of what the boat looked like. So you can see it's pretty. It's not a large naval vessel, but like I said, a crew of 2 to 3 in here, and the ability to transport, probably eight troops safely, or a large amount of supplies. Anyways, so there you go. I'm sure we're going to start hearing the Bayraktar song pretty soon. I'm not going to rabbit hole too far into this, into what my beliefs are, what's going on with NATO. But what I will say is, over the last evening, the Ukrainian foreign ministry said that when the Russians attacked in Odessa, a Shahed drone fell and exploded in the territory of Romania. Apparently, Romania's response, and I don't know if this is official or not, was basically no response. It's okay. Nothing special. This is paraphrasing, obviously. It's not a direct military threat from Russia to Romania. Let it burn. So what we have so far is this the Ukrainians basically stating that is a Shahed drone falling on the Romanian side of the Danube, which technically is a strike on NATO, which technically could involve invoking Article 4 and 5. Prior to this, a Romanian ship was hit in the Danube River estuary, directly across from the Ukrainian border, and no crew members were injured or killed. Apparently, the ship was completely empty at the time, and again, nothing. And then, if you remember last year, the mystery missile that landed in Poland and killed a couple of farmers. The Ukrainians swore up and down it was not them. It was not their air defense missile. It was the Russians, possibly accidentally or whatever. But it was the Russians. And very quickly after making all that noise, some NATO countries got maybe slightly miffed with Zelensky, and all of a sudden it went quiet, and we never saw, I don't believe, the final report. So, in my mind, NATO is trying to avoid this becoming an escalation, and there's also a time too where the Russians shot at a British patrol aircraft in the it's called a rivet in the Black Sea, and the missile either failed to activate or there were countermeasures taken by the British plane. They basically said it was all an accident and no worries, and move on. So to me, that's 4 incidents so far where NATO countries have either been targeted and or struck by the Russians, and NATO's bending over backwards to not escalate. At some point, Russia's going to cross the line. It's going to happen on camera. It's going to involve deaths, and it's not going to be blamed on Ukraine. And you just cannot have this many millions of munitions going off all around NATO countries and not have an accident, a ship, a plane, personnel, or a country hit and targeted at causing damage that can't be explained away. So, anyways, that's something where you just want to watch that space, I think. So this gentleman right here was the Russian pilot who arranged to get his family out of Russia, and he was responsible for ferrying parts for Su-27s and Su-30s between 2 Russian military bases. He arranged with the Ukrainian Ukrainian military that he was going to defect. He was going to bring this Mi-8 helicopter across the border. They were going to pay him $500,000 and give him a new life, him and his family. He did that, landed in Ukraine, and once his 2 co-pilots or whatever crew members found out what was going on, they were not on side with it. Gunshots were fired either from within or outside of the helicopter. There's holes in the fuselage of the helicopter, and those other 2 gentlemen are no longer with us. Here is the pilot basically recorded a message that they want to send, that they're basically broadcasting to the Russian military, saying all is well. Take some equipment, bring it to Ukraine, sell it to Ukraine. They'll give you a new life. It's all in Ukrainian, but basically he says you are guaranteed that you will live, receive a reward, and if you want, even continue to fly, but on the side of truth. So he's basically saying you could join the Ukrainian military. This is when they originally took over the Mi-8, the Ukrainians. Special Forces, flight book. Looks like I don't know. See, we can see the bullet holes here at the front. I apologize, I don't have a translation for this. That's him. Basically saying what we talked about. Oh, maybe. What did I miss there? I didn't know this was coming. Sorry. Looks like they've pulled the two gentlemen off there. They're working on one there, at least. They brought a stretcher in. I looked for a translation, I could not find one. Probably based on this video footage, he's probably recounting how he arranged and got the helicopter across the border. Apologize for the fast forwarding. I just want to see if there was anything. Previous Russian defectors with the MiG, like. And there's the message to his, I'll bet you, to his ex-Russian compatriots. You'll be safe. Anyways, very, very interesting. It's very, very smart to put that video out. People can see that he's alive and well and not being eaten by Nazis and all that sort of stuff. So this is, I haven't been able to verify this, but in Klishchivka, apparently approximately 20 Russian soldiers mass surrendered to the Ukrainians. You can see them all walking, hands up, no weapons. So I have not seen this video footage before, so it looks to me to be legit as far as a mass surrender. And again, I can't geolocate it to Klishchivka. The foliage, etc., you know, being over a year old now, the war being over a year old now, you could see old footage from last year with the same foliage or whatever, so we can't use that as a guide anymore. But to me, this seems legit based on the source and the fact that I've never seen or heard of this kind of a mass surrender and followed by a drone for such a long period of time. And I think, you know, if they weren't surrendering, they'd be targeted, and they're clearly not being targeted. They've all got their hands up and just walking along in single file. And when I see that, I don't take joy in people, you know, being captured, that sort of thing, but what I see is 20 future Ukrainians being exchanged back. So that's fantastic. Real quick, this is Erdogan in Sochi meeting with Putin as we speak, and the grain deal is definitely going to be prime as far as the agenda. I'm really hoping that Erdogan plays hardball and sends a message that we need to reopen it up. You need to stop targeting Odessa. We'll see. This is a very cool drone. So what you have here is I believe it's a 5 or 6 rotor drone, kind of like a medium to heavier lift drone. This is an anti-tank mine. And apparently what they're using is a delayed fuse, and there are several fuse variants, but one of the fuse variants can be up to 13 seconds. They can range from 3.5 to 4 seconds, which I think you're going to want more than that based on the fact if you're going to be dropping this from a high altitude, you don't want it going off in the air. So I'm guessing that they would be using this UZRGM fuse variant that can give you up to 13-second delay. So basically what happens is this drone drops this anti-tank mine from the air, sets the fuse, and then it's got about 13 seconds before it goes off, and that is a serious amount of explosive. So here's what would happen. Load it in, Put the strap on, keep it safe. Drone flies away, finds its target, it's over the target. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 blades, by the way. And then boom. And then it drops it. And this pin in the side of the anti-tank mine is attached to the drone, and as it falls, it pulls the pin, sets the fuse. These things will do a lot of damage from the air. That is a large amount of explosives. Sitting on the ground, they do a massive amount of damage. Dropped onto a vehicle or a trench, especially dropped onto a vehicle, I don't know if it's capable of dropping onto a vehicle per se, maybe in the back of a truck or whatever, but to me, I think that this is going to be dropped into trenches and explode along the length of the trench, but we'll see. Anyways, 7 kilograms of explosives, which is, I think, what, 16 pounds, something like that. My conversion's off. Anyways, really interesting. This is the machine, truck / machine that was responsible for dropping off dragon's teeth and placing them properly. Something happened to it. I'm going to guess it was hit by an FPV drone, just a guess. And this was in... this was in Staromilnivka. So basically, this dragon's teeth layer was trying to create some additional fortifications very close to the front line. FPV drones can now fly one-way trip, obviously, 15 kilometers. So basically, you can have an FPV pilot on this side in the Ukrainian, and relatively safe, and fly at 15 kilometers across the border to a target. So, good on them. Not that dragon's teeth are the be-all and end-all. All they are is basically an obstacle to slow down troops and equipment so that they can be targeted by drones, artillery, snipers, RPGs, that sort of thing. Two mid-sized men could flip over those dragon's teeth if they were unopposed. In Back to the Future, the Russians have now started to make flak towers and flak ramps, and they're basically driving short and medium range anti-air systems onto ramps. So there's like maybe 15 to 20 feet up in the air, so it gives them a little more line of sight over top of the tree line that's around and protect whatever assets are behind them here. Maybe this is on the outskirts of Moscow. I'm not sure if this one's been geolocated. But this is basically World War II flak towers. And to prove my point, there's a flak tower. They basically took I think it's a book system, and they got a crane, and then they built this tower, and then they put this mobile short and medium range system up on top of a flak tower. I got nothing. This was supposedly the world's second greatest military. Make of that what you will. And to finish things off with a little bit of a funny, this went longer than I thought. I kind of packed in more news than I thought, but a little bit of a funny. A lot of the times, you wonder what people look like when you say nice things to them. Well, this photographer basically took a picture of somebody without saying anything and then told them they were beautiful. And here's what each one of those people reacted to. Serious, oh, thank you. Smile, huge smile. Smirk, nice smile. Not really smiling. Oh, thanks, that's so nice. Really? I'm beautiful? Thank you so much. And Buddha enough. You can see the joy that just elation. You can see it in the eyes here, and the mouth, the Mona Lisa mouth. That's no, you can't. There's no difference whatsoever. Anyways, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this. Feel free to like, share, subscribe, add a comment. Let me know what kind of content you want, when you want it. If you would want content like 30 minutes or less in the morning before work, Eastern Standard Time, for example. Would you want an hour or less at noon of sort of more in-depth news coverage of the previous day? 7, 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, a 1 to 2 hour live chat where we basically cover off sort of map updates and combat footage. So let me know what you think, what you want. I'm happy to fill in any gaps that are out there in coverage and meet the needs of people. So thank you very much for tuning in. Again, please like, subscribe, and share. I could really use the visibility to help me know that I'm doing something that matters. And have a great day. Slava Ukraini.